What's up, YouTube? So today I want to take a look at the Korg Wavestate. I've had this device for about a week and I've been blown away by what you can do with it. There's some amazing sounds, a lot of layering, some incredible samples. One frustration I had when I first started with the Wavestate was that you didn't really have control over the samples themselves. The samples are recorded and they're placed in the device, and you can't go in, you can't manipulate the sample start time, the sample end time. And because of that, you can't really get these granular type effects that you can get in, say, the Octatrack, where you can manipulate the start and end time of the samples. So I had this frustration, slight frustration, but it's one that I wanted to find some sort of workaround for. And so I've come up with a particular kind of method for creating what sounds like granular type effects within the Korg Wavestate. Essentially, what I'm doing is taking a lot of similar samples. For this tutorial, we'll look at vocal hits. So I load up a bank of vocal hits, very similar sounds, and then modulate between the samples at very high playback rates. So very short duration between the steps of the wave sequence. If that doesn't make any sense, hopefully it will at the end of this video. So let's dive right in. So for today, I want to show a way to create granular-like sounds within the Korg Wavestate. It's not granular synthesis exactly, because you're not necessarily manipulating the start and end times of samples, but we can create a kind of granular-like effect by using lots of very similar samples and modulating between the samples very quickly. So let's get started. We want to first initialize our patch. So turn this counterclockwise. I'll bring you to the init performance, and then you hit enter. And we'll have our initialize patch sound, which you're probably familiar with. The first thing I want to do is load up some samples. So we'll click wseek steps. That'll bring us to our different steps. So right now you can see we only have 2. If I try clicking the others, nothing pops up in our little LCD screen. So let's go here and let's change our first sample. And we're going to use some vocal hits for this one. So we can find those by clicking into our sample. We see multi-sample here. You hit enter. Let's hit shift back category. Let's find hits. There we are. So hits, we have our band hit. So tons of options here, thousands of samples within the Korg Wavestate. So let's listen to some vocal hits. So that 4, let's start.
J, come
groove.
Start with these clear,
J, come
clean vocal samples. So let's use these. So we'll start with hit voice 1, hit enter. Then we want to load up similar sounds for all 16 within this bank A of our steps. So let's go to multi-sample, shift back category, hits, and we go down, we find the next one for that voice. So we had voice 1, now we're on voice 2. Voice 1, 2. So we don't hear it quite yet because we need to hit enter. And hitting enter and then the step that you want to isolate will have that particular lane, in this instance the sample lane, solo that one step. So it won't step sequence and move between these steps, but just stay on that one step. So once again, that's enter and then the step number. So let's listen to our second step.
J, J.
Cool. So we have it for these 2 steps. Now let's load it up for all 16. We can do this quite quickly. So let's go to our sample lane And you go to the last page for the sample lane, which is the sample lane utility, and add steps to end. And we want to add 14, which will bring us up to all 16. Now, for add steps to end, that'll take the sample from the very last step that we have and duplicate it for however many steps we indicate to add at the end. So that will be our vocal sample 2. So let's hit add steps 14, add steps complete. And now you can see we have vocal sample 2 for all of these. And we can just scroll down. Now we have 3.
Come on.
Now we go to 4.
Groove.
5. 6. Whoops. Let's make sure this one's 5. Now 6. 7. 8. 9. 10.
Get up.
11. 12. Almost there. 13. 14. 15. 16. Cool. So now let's hit enter, unsolo that. Now we still have that crossfade happening. Let's take out the crossfade. So we want to go to our timing lane, and we can, for the first page in the timing lane, we can select crossfade and turn it to off. Now let's listen.
J. J.
Cool, so we have just the 2 samples for the first A1 and A2 in our sample lane. So let's make our loop end at A16. Now let's listen.
J. Come on. Groove.
Now if we wanted to add more, a nice little trick is that we could go add steps to this lane, 16. Then if we hit W-seek steps, we can go into our second bank. And now we have the voice 16 on our very first step. And we can just change this just as easily and quickly as we did for the others. So it can be quite fast to actually switch samples out, as long as you're in a sample range that is close to the sample that you want to select. So almost there. Let's fill that out. Help create a bit more dynamicism for our patch later on. Almost there. Okay. 31. Now 32. Cool. So we can listen.
Come on.
Kind of beatboxy sounds. These one hits. Cool.
J.
So now what we want to do is go to our timing lane, and well, first let's go to our sample lane. Let's make our loop end at B16. So now we have 32 different samples, and of course you can duplicate this process for banks C and D if you'd like. We'll just use these 32 samples for this tutorial. So let's go to our timing lane. Duration. Let's experiment a little bit. Let's see what happens when we start putting this into extreme values. So you can get some interesting stuff with these really short durations. Now you notice that the timbre that you're hearing presently is going to be dependent on when this loop ends. So you can hear that we're kind of getting these granular-like beat repeat effects. You might recognize that sound from, say, Autechre's Gantz Graf. Now we can assign our loop start and our loop end to knobs. That can help us kind of play around with the timbre a bit in real time. In addition, we can assign the speed for our timing lane, the duration, also to a knob. So let's try doing that first. So we hit mod, page plus, and so it says move a target knob or enter to modulate the current parameter. So we want to hit enter, and you can see we have timing duration for A1, and then let's hit a knob. So we have our shape knob, and we can choose an amount. Let's maybe say 100. Let's go into our sample lane and go to the first page for our sample lane. We'll change the loop start. So mod, page plus, current parameter, so sample loop start. Let's assign that to the gate performance knob. And we'll give it full intensity of 31. And then let's go back to our sample lane, loop end, and we'll hit mod, page plus, enter to modulate the current parameter. And let's assign that to our step sequence performance knob. Enter to continue, give it the full intensity. Let's listen. So you can get some interesting stuff out of that. Now, of course, there's many more ways that we can modulate this. For instance, if we go to our pitch lane, we can then change the first step for our pitch lane, step A1. We can change the transposition for that. Let's assign that to a knob, maybe to the speed knob. Enter a new modulation, transpose. Let's do 48 semitones, so make it kind of extreme. Let's hear how that changes the timbre of our sound. We get some modulations in the timbre. So you can see that that also modulates our timbre. Of course, we can use our filter too. And we can use all of our LFOs. We can also assign those LFOs to modulate parameters outside of their pre-assigned parameters. So outside of filter, amp, pitch, pan. For instance, we can go to our sample lane. Let's go to our
the first page of our sample lane, and we can assign, say, the pitch LFO to the sample start. So let's try that. So mod plus, enter to modulate the current parameter, and now we hit our pitch LFO, enter, and then we'll give it intensity. Now let's listen to that. Now we can play with the frequency of that. I can change this. Now, of course, we can add some polyphony. So it can get very interesting very quickly. This is a good way just to create kind of glitch effects, to create little sound fragments that maybe you incorporate in tracks. I don't know if this is going to necessarily be your lead synth, the granular vocal madness, but it's something that you can play around with, have fun with, and maybe it'll give you some new creative ideas. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, please hit like, please subscribe. There will be more to come in the future. So I hope to see you here next time.